Remember 15 years ago at the Mesita Ranch? Another time when you took it out on a woman? Unfortunately for you, that woman happened to be my mother.
That's right, folks. It's time to look at another badass spaghetti western. And this time, it's 1967's Death Rides a Horse. And first things first, awesome title. Death Rides a Horse. Almost as awesome as God forgives, ... I don't! Exclamation point. Death Rides a Horse is a simple tale of sweet-ass revenge, not unlike that of Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill, as you will see, because he took direct inspiration from this very film, that stars none other than the always awesome Lee Van Cleef, as Ryan. A man hellbent on getting revenge of the gang of lowlifes he used to ride with, that screwed him over. Then there's John Philip Law, who plays our hero, I guess. With Lee Van Cleef there, it's hard to say. However, I'm going with John Philip Law, since he's playing Bill, a man also hellbent on getting revenge on a gang of lowlifes who violated and murdered his entire family. And wouldn't you know it, it's the same gang of douchebags that Lee Van Cleef's going after. So it's gonna be a collision course with wackiness, or just a lot of shooting and people getting killed. As Lee Van Cleef and John Philip Law, two actors with three-word names, dish out bowlful after bowlful of sweet-ass revenge. So this is it, the fast-paced tale that is definitely a worthy contender of top 10 best spaghetti westerns ever made. Death Rides a Horse. So it all starts off one rainy-ass night when a gang of outlaws ride into this town to steal $200,000 in cash that they know the town has. Which is why all these guys are standing guard while one of them goes inside his nice, cozy, dry house to be with his family, out of all this rain and shit. Only these guys all suck at their job because they're all immediately and easily killed by this gang of outlaws. As four of them just let themselves into this family man's home, where they kill the father, rape the mother and the daughter, kill them too, all while this little boy cowers in the corner and watches the entire thing. And for some reason, they don't kill him even though they see him sitting there. I guess they just forgot with all the rape and murder. And this was obviously his family that he just watched get murdered. So he's definitely traumatized for life now. But he was sure to take notice that all four assailants had distinguishing features that he could use, identify them by later on. There's Tattoo Guy, there's Scarface Guy, there's this crazy earring guy, and then there's this guy who's simply a face, since he was the only one to have his mask pulled off during the whole violation scene. So once they're through raping and killing everything inside, except the boy of course, they must have just forgot he was there, because it seems like they would have just killed him too. They shoot the hell out of the place, then the last one out makes sure to set the place on fire. Bam! These guys are good with their bullets, if not stupid as fuck. How nice of them. They didn't really need to do any of that shit. All they needed to do was just steal that $200,000 and go. Now if this kid somehow manages to survive this burning fire, he's definitely be so traumatized for life that it will send him on a violent path of revenge. One would think anyway. This is a spaghetti western after all. That's when another random member of this gang shows up and discovers this boy in a burning house of corpses and pulls him out. And like the others, can only be identified by a particular feature he has. This one being a cool skull necklace, as he sets the boy outside next to a wagon so he can have a nice view of his family home burning to the ground. As this gang of murderers and thieves ride out of town, presumably with their $200,000 and a bunch of dead people left behind. One of them loses a spur, and the traumatized little boy reaches out and grabs it and keeps it as a souvenir. Something to remember the brutal murder of his family by. Then whoosh, cut to 15 long years later, and this boy is all grown up. And yup, hell-bent on getting revenge for the murder of his entire family. That night on the Mesita Ranch. That's the family name, Mesita. He's Bill Mesita. He's gone from a terrified little boy to a young strapping John Philip Law, who's playing Bill, and he spent the entire 15 years becoming a crack shot with nearly every gun known to man. I guess he's not over the violation and murder of his family quite yet. You don't exactly forget a thing like that. Then crack, we cut to Lee Van Cleef, the legend himself. Playing a guy named Ryan, as he's being unshackled and set free from a 15-year prison sentence he was serving, after being screwed over by his former gang members. Now anybody who's seen enough spaghetti westerns, or westerns in general, can pretty much guess what this guy Ryan, who I'll probably just call Lee Van Cleef from this point on, wants to do once he gets out of prison. And that's get revenge on all the gang members that screwed him over and got him locked up there in the first place for 15 years of hard labor. Reminds me of Eli Wallach's storyline in fellow spaghetti western Ace High. Came out a year after this.
15 years of hard labor sort of cuts into your social life.
So once Lee Van Cleef's effects are returned to him, he's set free from this desert prison and immediately offered a horse. That's a good business tactic. Get him right when they get out of prison. They don't have a horse, you know they're gonna need one, which he's glad to purchase before noticing two dudes watching him from a distant hill. And again, if you've seen other westerns, this is probably a couple of hired doofs from the folks who screwed Lee Van Cleef over in the first place. Sent over here to kill him immediately upon his release because they all know that Lee Van Cleef's gonna come after them the second he gets out for fucking him over. Hey, this one's easy to follow, people. Then we get, once again, another awesome spaghetti western score by the great Ennio Morricone. Which some of you might recognize. Quentin Tarrentino used it in Kill Bill, when Uma Thurman cut that lady's arm off after revealing her presence to Lucy Liu. So, Lee Van Cleef, being no fool, tricks these two idiots by hiding behind a rock and unlatching their saddles while they go out looking for him. Now he can ride on in peace without these two idiots following him. See? That should slow him down for a little bit. So cut to John Philip Law again as Bill, as he spots Lee Van Cleef checking out his family's graves. He claims to have known him or something, and only recently heard about this massacre.
That was my entire family. I'm sorry.
And then gets his condolences and just leaves. Nice to meet you, Lee Van Cleef. Come back anytime, leave flowers or something. So then that same day, we find Bill hanging out in that same local town that he never left since childhood, apparently. Then the current sheriff comes over and just offers him a job as deputy sheriff, since he plans on retiring soon, which would make him sheriff. Only Bill has other plans. He's way too busy with that whole avenging the death of his family thing. So some other time maybe.
Thanks anyway, Sheriff.
It's right about that time that Lee Van Cleef spots his two desaddled buddies from before, the ones that were sent to kill him, as they have finally tracked him down to this town. Good work, guys. Way to not just give up and go home. So that night, they climb into the room via the window where Lee Van Cleef is staying, so they can gun him down while he's sleeping. Only, nope, Lee Van Cleef's way too smart for these dummies. Has naturally been waiting for them the whole time, so he can blam blam, kill them both dead. This, of course, attracts the attention of that sheriff guy from before.
They came in the window. It wasn't to wish me pleasant dreams.
Who in the end can clearly see that Lee Van Cleef did act in self-defense.
Okay, self-defense, I guess.
So we can't really arrest him, but just ask him to get the hell out of town, please. Guy who kills people, which he does without a fuss. See, Lee Van Cleef's a reasonable guy here. So flip to later as the sheriff pays a visit to Billy Boy here, just so that he can show him that two of the guys that Lee Van Cleef killed, one of them was wearing spurs identical to the one he's been keeping as a souvenir all these years. The one that came from the gang that murdered his family. So this gets his attention, of course, and the sheriff's more than happy to point him in the direction of Lee Van Cleef, since he figures he's helping Bill here, since his whole life has been about finding his family's killers and getting sweet-ass revenge. So the sheriff is supportive in him now in getting his revenge. I guess he did try to offer him a legit job as sheriff, so he did try a little to get him to go straight and all. So naturally, this sends Bill right after Lee Van Cleef so that he can find the gang associated with this particular type of spur, which I guess was a thing then in the Old West. Gangs who rode together had to wear the same spurs for some reason, I don't know. So then we get some more shots of what I can now immediately recognize as Almeria, Spain. even though I've never been there. A lot of the spaghetti westerns filmed there use the same exact landscapes. Now since Lee Van Cleef is so used to people following him and trying to screw him over and kill him, while he's sleeping quietly in his bed sometimes, he immediately spots Bill following him. And double backs on him and sneaks up on him from behind.
Don't turn around.
Just to see what the hell this doofus wants. So Bill explains about the spurs.
15 years, there's been no new track. Only a spur. Then you come along and there's 3 spurs.
Which leads Lee Van Cleef to believe that they're just simply after the same people. Only he wants first crack at him. 15 years in prison is way more important than his murdered family who was also raped. So Bill suggests they work together. But Lee Van Cleef feels this guy's just a little too hell-bent on revenge and could ruin his whole agenda with these dirtbags. That's when Lee Van Cleef says what I thought was an old Klingon proverb about revenge being a dish that is best served cold.
Do you know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold? It is very cold in space.
You got Lee Van Cleef saying it.
Somebody once wrote that revenge is a dish that has to be eaten cold.
Khan saying it. And once again, it can be referenced back to Kill Bill when the movie opens with this written quote that's even credited as an old Klingon proverb. Even though you know Quentin Tarrentino must have seen this movie, which came out before The Wrath of Khan. So who the hell said it first, I wonder? It's probably from somewhere else. Maybe it's in the Bible or something, I don't know. And Lee Van Cleef says it a little bit different. Instead of saying served cold, he says eaten cold.
Revenge is a dish that has to be eaten cold.
Same general meaning, I guess. Anyway, Lee Van Cleef ditches Bill there horseless in the desert as he rides off with both, but not before letting him know where he can pick his horse up later. How nice of him.
That's why I'm going to leave your horse at Red Rock. It's 10 miles from here.
This is just so Lee Van Cleef can get some distance between himself and this Bill guy. And again, this is a lot like the storyline from Ace High with Eli Wallach's character.
Oh, don't take it so badly.
So then Lee Van Cleef shows up in this town looking for a guy named Bert Kavanaugh.
I'm looking for Bert Kavanaugh.
Only this bartender asshole doesn't want to help him, so he says fuck it.
I'm selling whiskey.
And just heads upstairs anyway to just see for himself. When these 2 other dicks try to stop him. But no one tells Lee Van Cleef where to go. So he responds to that by just punching them both in the face and going right upstairs. No words necessary. Fuck yeah, you go Lee Van Cleef. So Lee Van Cleef busts into the room of this guy. Slicky Hugh Hefner dude who must be that Kavanaugh guy he's looking for. Cause he immediately recognizes Lee Van Cleef. This was one of the guys who got Lee Van Cleef sent to prison for 15 years. Then hired 2 dumbasses to try to kill him the second he got out. What a jerk off. So now, instead of just killing this guy Kavanaugh, Lee Van Cleef wants him to pay him $15,000.
I should kill you. What do you want? 15,000. What?
$1,000 for every year he had to spend in prison. Sounds like a fair deal to me. This guy looks well off. One of those I run the whole town kind of criminals. Again, like an Ace High.
Bam! And send for the sheriff.
Plus he gets to live this way. Lee Van Cleef's even nice enough to give this scumbag until morning to get the $15,000.
15,000, 1,000 for every year in jail cash.
Before taking a picture of another old friend that he wants to get revenge on, right off the guy's wall. Because he keeps pictures of his buddies on the wall. How sweet of him. Right before just leaving for the evening. Bye, Lee Van Cleef. So then Bill finally makes it to town to see this black man get roughhoused and tossed out into the streets.
Bad luck at the table, Fred?
Yep, it's the Old West alright. So after hearing this guy's sob story about being screwed out of his money, Bill pulls a Trinity and marches him right back into that saloon to get justice served. John Philip Law style.
What are you doing? Are you choking?
He even decides to have a drink with the guy and stay a while. But that's going too far for this dick, so blammo! Only this guy Bill, who as we all know, has been spinning around with his gun for the last 15 years, practicing every day for hours on end instead of just getting a girl mate, doesn't leave until he finishes his drink. So blammo bloom, take that shit! Then this idiot makes a total ass of himself when he tries to get a punch in, only to be punched literally out the window, dumbass. Followed by 2 more idiots who decide to throw their hats into the ring, only to be easily defeated as well. That's when the sheriff decides to be sheriff, because he's been sitting there this whole time, puts on his badge and chimes in to have this guy arrested.
All right, stranger, I'm putting you under arrest.
And locked up for 10 years. Way to earn your paycheck, fatty. I wouldn't take this sheriff seriously for a second. Then suddenly that Kavanaugh guy appears and comes right to Bill's aid by claiming it was all self-defense.
If I'm worth anything as a witness, I'd say this is a case of self-defense.
And since Kavanaugh is such a big deal in this Jerkwater Burg, not unlike the Roadhouse town, they just let Bill go.
Based on the personality of the witness, the charge is hereby withdrawn. The prisoner may go. Cards.
That easy. Kavanaugh guy writes his own ticket. And once again, I've seen this in other westerns. It reminds me of My Name is Nobody, when after showing off his gun skills in the bar, he gets hired by the bad guy to kill Henry Fonda.
The loser will be here tomorrow morning. Name's Jack Beauregard.
If you're looking for a job, I may be able to help you. Come up to my office.
And yup, this guy Kavanaugh hires Bill to go kill Lee Van Cleef for him. And just like nobody, he agrees and takes the money. Probably just to get the money. So cut to Bill as he sneaks into Lee Van Cleef's room to fulfill his end of the bargain, I guess. But as we know, Lee Van Cleef is just so used to people sneaking into his room at night to try to kill him while he's sleeping that he easily bamboozles Bill.
Hands behind your head, son.
Bill wants to know exactly what Lee Van Cleef wants this guy Kavanaugh for anyway.
Why does he want you killed? Who is Kavanaugh?
Only he's not about to tell him the whole seedy tale quite yet. He tells him just to back off of Kavanaugh for now until he gets his precious $15,000.
Because if you don't, I might get mad.
Only Bill's so determined just to get to the bottom of this shit, he says nope in your face, Lee Van Cleef, and just bails.
Get ready to get mad.
So with the assistance of that guy Bill helped earlier, he's pointed in the direction of these two folks. A delightful old couple of alcoholics.
Where's the bottle?
There isn't any bottle.
Where is the bottle?
Will tell you anything you want to know. For booze, of course. And all they really end up telling him is that Kavanaugh came to this town with nothing, and now he runs the friggin' place. So swish, cut to Kavanaugh playing cards as Bill forces his way into the game.
Deal the cards.
And we get this crazy full circle pan around the table thing with the camera. Whoa, I'm dizzy now. Then the game gets real heated when Kavanaugh lays down 4 aces.
4 aces.
Bill claims to have 4 aces as well. Huh?
Me too. 4 aces.
Kavanaugh doesn't like his little joke here. Only he's not joking, as we see when he reaches over the table, tears open Kavanaugh's shirt to reveal the other 4 aces. That being the huge ass tattoo across Kavanaugh's chest. The very same tattoo that Bill saw that night as a little boy, back on the Mesita Ranch, which sends Bill whirling into a flashback of that very moment. This is one of those details he remembered to ID his family's killers. So Kavanaugh is one of these guys, in case you haven't figured that shit out yet. And yes, once again we see that Quentin Tarantino referenced this scene of the flashback with the red filter and the close-ups of the eyes, just like in Kill Bill. So back to the current time for the showdown with Kavanaugh.
Remember Kavanaugh, 15 years ago at the Mesita Ranch? You and your friends killed everybody.
When, to make it even more epic, Bill orders the piano man to play 3 notes.
Piano player, hit 3 notes.
To signal a draw. Ooh, this is gonna be tense. And thank God the piano man's on board with this too, so bwong. 3 notes later and blam, 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 blam. Bill puts 4 bullets in this guy and wins the day. That's 1 down, plus 2 more cronies for bonus points. Bing bong! Make that 3. Only the 3rd point goes to Lee Van Cleef, who just saved your ass. Because Bill was all out of bullets at this point. And as Lee Van Cleef points out, wouldn't have had to have saved his ass had he not wasted 4 friggin' bullets on 1 guy.
4 bullets for 1 man, that's a waste.
Good point, Lee Van Cleef. You see, he's a smart guy. Lee Van Cleef then takes off again with Bill's horse in tow just like before. Only this time he leaves him an IOU note for $15,000 for killing that guy Kavanaugh before he got his money. I know, right? Couldn't wait 1 more day to kill the guy before he got his money? Seriously? You impatient bastard, you. Bill then runs his ass off all the way to the train station going after Lee Van Cleef, where he finds out the train left 15 minutes ago. Lee Van Cleef and all. But he did leave him his horse there to be nice. as this old fart running the entire station explains. And Lee Van Cleef, as a joke, told this old guy to give him a kiss when he got there, which this lonely old coot is totally willing to do.
He said I should give you the horse and the kiss. And the horse is there waiting for you. And now where do you want that kiss?
Yikes.
No thanks, I'll settle for the horse.
What's with these spaghetti westerns and letting one single 100-year-old guy run an entire train station on his own? Just like in Once Upon a Time in the West, or other ones I've seen. So then cut to the next town, Linden City, where we get to meet this banker guy named Walcott. Right as Lee Van Cleef shows up too, which causes Mr. Walcott's little speech to be cut short, so he can be informed about Lee Van Cleef's unwanted arrival. Then, back in the safety of his bank office, Walcott is informed by one of his men that Lee Van Cleef is in the lobby and here to see him. Wow, what an honor! Lee Van Cleef wants to see you, man. Walcott tells the guy to show him in as he gets his desk gun ready. And once again, Lee Van Cleef outsmarts the shit out of someone. He's just way too used to selfish, greedy assholes trying to kill him. So, as you may have guessed, this guy Walcott is one of the guys who screwed Lee Van Cleef over 15 years ago. And also one of the dudes who raped and killed Bill's entire family.
That was my entire family.
He's the face guy, if you remember. The only one whose face got revealed, that guy. Also played Tuco's brother in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So now Lee Van Cleef finally gets his private meeting with Walcott. And to show how serious he is, slams the door shut on this guy with a bullet.
And close the door behind you. This is a private talk. The door!
Awesome as usual, Lee Van Cleef. So just like Kavanaugh, Walcott's kind of made him into that guy who runs the entire town kind of guy. And just like Kavanaugh, Lee Van Cleef wants $15,000 out of him. Plus, he wants Kavanaugh's $15,000 on top of that, because, you know, he got killed and never got his money. He wants $30,000 out of this guy, basically, if you can add. Walcott easily agrees to this shit and offers Lee Van Cleef a $10,000 advance even, as Lee Van Cleef takes a seat and is finally outsmarted by someone. When he takes a seat in Walcott's guest chair, that's also sitting on top of a trap door that he had installed. So he was ready for this type of shit. He even has a pull switch at his desk to activate the door. Lee Van Cleef drops through a hole in the floor and crashes to the ground. Ouch! Nice though. This Walcott guy is like a James Bond villain of the old West. Lee Van Cleef is then surrounded by these four happy looking fellas. Who beat him up, of course, and have a real swell time at it. It's good to like what you do. When you enjoy what you do, it's not actually work. Walcott then steps in to make sure they don't kill him. Not quite yet. He wants to get Lee Van Cleef to spit in his face first. There you go. Walcott then, like a Bond villain, tells Lee Van Cleef his whole plan to rob the town of the $1 million it has in its bank. Then he's gonna bail town with his gang.
I've been working at this for years, building their confidence in me, the citizens as well as the governor of this state. I have in my bank more than $1 million now.
And now, with Lee Van Cleef in the picture, he wants to frame it all on him. So they have like a patsy. A plan which he immediately puts into action. This guy don't waste time like Walcott. They blow the safe, steal the $1 million, kill a bunch of people, then bail town. And dump Lee Van Cleef behind them so he can take the rap. Probably similar to what they did to him before when they originally screwed him over 15 years ago. So Lee Van Cleef's taken back to town as prisoner where the whole thing's dumped on him as he gets framed by Walcott, who bullshits the whole town to believe in his story that Lee Van Cleef was in on this whole robbery. So now Lee Van Cleef's gonna be hanged for this shit.
And don't you worry, he'll be hanged, that's a promise.
So now this time, Bill gets to come to Lee Van Cleef's rescue and bust his ass out of jail by using a train to pull the entire window off the cell he's being held in. MacGyvers of the old West. And then they bail the hell out of town. Walcott then convinces the sheriff to go after them as he sneaks off in an entirely different direction. So then cut to Lee Van Cleef and Bill, as Lee Van Cleef claims to know where Walcott's headed. And once Bill knows this information, he pulls a Lee Van Cleef on Lee Van Cleef and ditches him there alone in the desert with no horse. Only he has no intent to leave it somewhere for him to find later. So he's kind of a dick about that part of it.
I'll see you around, Grandpa.
Grandpa, do you believe that Lee Van Cleef was 2 years younger than I am now when he did this movie? He looks a lot older.
That's when Lee Van Cleef opens up to Bill about his true feelings for him.
I'd like to have had a son like you.
Aw, that's nice. The sentimental Lee Van Cleef, not afraid to show his true feelings. So then cut to Bill, who's tracked down this place where Walcott's headed. A place that has got to be the most miserable dead heads in the sand town on Earth. This is the town you pass through before getting to actual hell. It's not a very welcoming place. They could have at least cleaned up some of these skulls and rotting heads. So there, Bill enters this cantina, only it's a lot less lively than the one in Mos Eisley in Star Wars. Not even a band. His presence even causes the only customers to leave in a rush of fear, so they don't get killed by whoever the hell just came into place. Except for this chick, who Bill assures her he means no harm.
I'm on your side.
That's when the real trouble shows up in town. As Bill sits casually unnoticed in the back corner doing nothing. As these dicks waste no time and go right to work violating every woman in the room while trying to get wasted at the same time. Stop trying to multitask. You guys are not capable of that. Eventually though, Bill decides he's not having any more of this shit. Puts his 2 cents in by standing right up to these monsters. Take a hike, table. And it looks like there's gonna be another showdown. Because this guy is yet another one of the men that Bill's been looking for. All this time when he spots his earring. The very same earring that he committed to memory. IDing him as the very same guy. Cause no one else could have an earring like that. Or it's just a good thing that he wore that earring loyally for 15 years. Just so Bill could recognize him right now. This sends Bill into another one of them flashbacks with a close-up thing with the Tarrentino red eye shot. To that traumatizing night again. So yup, showdown time. Again. And this guy really hates chairs. Same way Bill hated that table. I do like how Bill has to remind each guy that he enacts his revenge on, his reason for killing them.
Remember 15 years ago at the Mesita Ranch? Another time when you took it out on a woman? Unfortunately for you, that woman happened to be my mother.
Sounds like one hell of an overdub, right? Well, that's actually John Philip Law's real voice. He has a pretty distinctive voice when you hear him talk in other movies, so I know that's his voice. I like the dialogue. He really lets him know loudly and clearly as to why he's decided he's going to kill them.
I've decided to kill you.
And bang, he wins, of course. I had no doubt, but is easily knocked out seconds later. Huh, fancy that shit. But not killed, just so they can bring him to the brother of the guy he just killed, Pedro. This was his brother, Paco. So, Mexicans, I guess? So cut to that chanting score. As the wagon of stolen town money is locked up with the same care of the corpse of Jesus. Then we meet Pedro, who, it took me a second, but was in another spaghetti western that I reviewed called Django, Prepare a Coffin. And when not seeing his scumbag brother leading the pack, demands to know where the hell he is.
Really sparkle.
He's informed of a little situation that happened there at the cantina and doesn't take it too well.
I asked you where my brother was.
It's hard to feel bad since they're both rapists and killers themselves. So itching for revenge, Pedro is taken to Bill, who immediately recognizes the scar on Pedro's face as the scar that belonged to yet another one of them mass killers that he's been looking for all this time, who murdered his entire family.
You're not a murderer.
Then seconds later, Walcott steps in, and since his face is his ID, it's easy for him to remember this dick. So this is it. The last 2 killers on Bill's list, both in the same room. Too bad he's all tied up. Then he could say that line about the Mesita Ranch and kill 2 birds with 1 stone. So they make a deal with Bill to tell them where to find Lee Van Cleef, and that when they returned would grant Bill a fair gunfight. But who would believe a word any of these guys said? So Bill agrees because he has no choice really, and tells them where to find Lee Van Cleef. But since no one trusts anyone in the Spaghettiverse, they bury him up to his neck in the sand. Anyway, so he can bake in the hot sun like all these other deadheads did. And to make it worse, Pedro shoves salt down his throat, so he'll dehydrate quicker, I guess. They all then peace out and go after Lee Van Cleef together, leaving these 5 idiots behind to guard the helpless Bill. Do you think they buried his fine horse under him? So this Mexican guy watches as they all ride off to find Lee Van Cleef went, hey, that's no Mexican. That is Lee Van Cleef. Meaning Bill lied to them and sent them on some sort of wild goose chase. allowing Lee Van Cleef to stroll right into town. And gun down all those dupes rather easily. And that idiot. Touche, Lee Van Cleef. So it's back to Lee Van Cleef rescuing Bill again. Oh, these two. That's when the once frightened of everyone and everything townsfolk all come out of their homes and join together to help dig Bill out of the dirt. They look at Bill and Lee Van Cleef as godsends, which Lee Van Cleef is glad to accept on his terms.
Well, actually, I don't think I'm really in that close a relationship with our good Lord. But I am here for personal reasons. And it may just be those reasons coincide with yours. Huh?
He delivers his lines so professionally, like he knew exactly what he was going to say, and how to say it. It's the Lee Van Cleef method of acting. So with Walcott and company off on that wild goose chase, Lee Van Cleef and Bill prepare the town and its peoples for battle, so they can fight back against their murderous oppressors. This movie just turned into the Magnificent Seven. So Walcott and his gang finally returned, and realizing that they've been tricked, know that Lee Van Cleef and Bill will be ready for them. So prepare for war. And boom, the battle for Dusty Town is on. With bombs and shooting, of course. It's a clusterfuck. Everyone looks the same, so make sure you shoot the right people. Oops, was that one of my guys? You can spot the Mexicans easy. They're always wearing a sombrero and a completely white suit. Like that guy. He was Mexican, right? Was he bad or good? I don't even know. It's even a tad wacky. Waka waka, buddy. Ring the bell. And then it drags all the way on into the night, where everyone takes a breather until morning. And boom, it's morning! As Walcott does some preparing of his own, and Lee Van Cleef enjoys a shave before battle, with his shirt wide open, chest exposed to the world, and I hope you like that because he leaves it that way for the rest of the movie. So a little something for the ladies. Then Bill wakes up to quite the shock when he notices the exposed chest of Lee Van Cleef, and the skull necklace around it. And once again is sent into a flashback of that fateful night, after the 4 killers had left and the 5th man entered. The man who pulled young Bill from the burning house and rescued him. The man Bill only knew by his skull necklace. It was Lee Van Cleef the whole time! Bum bum bum! Yeah, maybe you already guessed that. I don't know. And again, like Earring Guy, it's a good thing he kept that particular piece of jewelry on for 15 years. He must have really liked it. It is kind of cool, I guess, if you're into skulls. I know that town he's in is into skulls. So Bill's all ready to gun him down right there for even being a part of that gang of shitheads that ruined his childhood. The way George Lucas ruined the childhood of these angry nerds. Yeah, times certainly have changed.
You were there too.
Even though Lee Van Cleef explains that he showed up after the fact and not in time to stop it from happening, I guess so. He was keeping some bad company in those days. However, those same men screwed him over and got him sent to prison for 15 years. So they never really did see eye to eye. Just bad choices and gangmates. That's when Lee Van Cleef suggests to Bill that he wait to kill him until after the current gunfight is finished. But no time to think about that because it's back on, baby. Blam, 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 blam. Starts happening again. Guess we have to work together until this thing's over. They're not really giving us a choice. So the shootout with Walcott and Pedro and whoever the hell's left wages on with this easy kill. And this one. And drown one too, why not? Too bad it's the windiest day of the year, but you're still able to get 2 roof kills. Blam blam. Then finally, Pedro gets his revenge served with that little reminder Bill likes to give.
Before you fire again, remember the Mesita Ranch.
Do you think any of them really actually remembered, considering that they did shit like that all the time? I mean, it's like, I rape and murder entire families for breakfast. Mesita Ranch? What the hell is that? Like I remember the family name of all the families that I took part in killing 15 years ago? You could be Abe Lincoln's American cousin for all I know. Or care. See, I don't care. I'm a bad guy. I'm a villain. I rape and I murder people. A lot. Name, Mesita Ranch. No, I don't remember that shit. That's what I mean. The wagon of cash is then toppled over so all the bills can blow away with the wind. Aw, that town's fucked, I guess. Then the final stooge, Walcott, is taken out with a knife toss. Flip, plop, dead. Revenge has been served cold and eaten. Only he didn't get a little reminder about the Mesita Ranch. Is he still alive maybe down there? You could remind him of that night at the Mesita Ranch, remember? That night at the Mesita Ranch? Yeah, you're dead. He might remember. So now it's just down to Lee Van Cleef and Bill. Bill still wants to kill Lee Van Cleef. I guess for his connection with those now dead guys. Lee Van Cleef's all out of bullets though. So Bill gives him one of his so this final showdown can happen.
I can see that. You don't even have your razor.
And the movie can end. Even though Lee Van Cleef really doesn't want to kill this guy Bill that he sees now as a son, as we know. And to show him that, Lee Van Cleef just starts walking with his back to Bill, who demands he turn around and face him.
Turn around, Ryan. Turn around, Ryan! Turn around, Ryan!
Which he does not, but Bill fires anyway. And he saves Lee Van Cleef's life from that guy instead. Lee Van Cleef then reveals that he never even loaded that one bullet into his gun, since he had no intention of killing him. He's not like those other guys, and Bill finally seems to see that. I think, because Bill just rides off and leaves him his horse, with a slight nod of acceptance.
Good luck, son.
Yep, see? He views him as a son he rescued from a fire his buddies at the time started, and didn't reunite with for 15 years. And that's all, folks. Fine. The end. Death rides his horse right out of this dusty shitburg, and on to who knows where. Maybe go take that job as a sheriff back home. Which leads me into my final thoughts on this awesome-ass spaghetti western, Death Rides a Horse. First, there's Lee Van Cleef, one of my top favorite actors. Someone I'll watch in anything, even if the movie's not so good. Because Lee Van Cleef always is. From For a Few Dollars More, to his most iconic role ever as Angel Eyes in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where he played the bad, all the way to the 80s where he went head-to-head with Snake Plissken in Escape from New York. He was just an awesome actor and I love his work. Such a face for the movies. Mystery Science Theater compared him to one of the Jim Henson rats. And I just think that's a perfect comparison. Sadly, he died in 1989. Then there's John Philip Law, who played Bill Mesita, who, just like Lee Van Cleef, appeared in Mystery Science Theater 3000 2 times. He was the star of Diabolic, and he was the main villain in Space Mutiny. He was also in Barbarella, and sadly he died in 2008. So all around, I think this is an excellent spaghetti western. And why wouldn't I think that? It was written by the same guy who wrote The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Had a great cast and an awesome score by Ennio Morricone. I highly recommend it, and so does Quentin Tarantino apparently. Now I know that I said that Death Rides a Horse is an awesome title, but John Philip Law didn't agree. He hated that title. The movie was originally called Duel in the Wind. I guess because the final duel takes place during that windstorm. But Lee Van Cleef actually suggested the title From Man to Man, which everyone liked so much, that's what they ended up calling the movie. Except in the United States, where it was retitled to Death Rides a Horse. Only who exactly is Death then? Bill, I guess. He was so hell-bent on killing everyone. Van Cleef just wanted to get paid off. And with that, I'll end this look at Lee Van Cleef doing what he does best at the height of his acting career. And say adios, folks, and I'll see you at the movies.
Remember 15 years ago at the Mesita Ranch? That was my entire family. Turn around, Ryan!